if it means I walk away with a Tesla. So.
Gee, you don't have to pay us; we'll pay you.
Exactly.
Well, talking about that, this event, it couldn't happen without the amazing Elahn and Cecil, and they are amazing, and I'm so lucky that the first day we kind of went back, sort of online. We went to the Zoom framework. If you guys don't like it, we'll switch it back to Teams. And that I wanted to let you know that I'm helping out Dave. I'm sort of taking over the organization, the group. Dave is always with us. It's bound to show up, but I'll be taking a lot more of that event. I'm also one of the lead organizer of what used to be called the South Florida Code Camp, right? And it's now called the SoFlo DevCon because shorter, schooler, right? And so, check that out. I don't think the website's out yet. It's part of Tech Hub South Florida, so you'll see more information about it. If you do see an email about it, you're interested in speaking, hint, hint, wink, wink, you let me know. But truly, what we want to do is we want to hear from the best. We're here for the Microsoft. We're here for a lot of things. And we're here thanks to the team at Gravity IT and Ryan. The Gravity IT's team is tremendous. You're going to hear all about it. But before you do, let me tell you that I really wanted him to come over and let you know. I know some of you guys are looking for jobs, except for Glenn that has the best job already. Don't worry about that, Glenn. The rest of us don't have the job that you do. But if you want to work with Glenn, or maybe Cecil, if he lets you, Elahn had, she has the money. She could figure it out how to get to work with Cecil. But if you want to work with Cecil, or you want to work with Glenn, or you're already working with Glenn, you got to talk to Ryan. So Ryan, tell us more about what you do.
Yeah, of course. And I appreciate you having me, Damien, as always. I'm going to go ahead and it's nothing fancy at all.
Right.
Just throw up our logo here. So yeah, Gravity IT Resources. We are a national IT staffing firm, headquartered out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Let me know, are you guys able to?
I don't think you're sharing your screen. Are you sharing? You want to share your screen?
I'm trying to. Oh, here we go. I think I'm doing it now.
You are now. I love it. That's the motto nowadays. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hear me?
Yeah.
You are now a co-host just in case, Ryan, so you should have no problems. I'm going to shut up now because we're going to hear from Ryan. Tell us.
Perfect. Yeah. So Gravity IT Resources, we're a national IT staffing firm, recruitment firm, headquartered out of South Florida. So we definitely have a very large presence, Miami-Dade, all the way up to West Palm, Juno Beach. Founded in 2015, so we're a little bit of a younger firm. But with that, we have made a pretty large national footprint. We now work with a little over 150 different clients across the U.S. And now, pre-pandemic, obviously, we were a lot more confined to our local markets. But that's kind of been one of the blessings with that's come along with the pandemic is now we're able to recruit all across the U.S. and we've acquired a lot more clients. So I specifically oversee all of our software development recruiting efforts. So I work with a team of software development recruiters where day in, day out, that's all we're doing is, talking to software developers, talking to clients, hiring different hiring managers that are looking for folks, specifically .NET developers. That's actually the skill set that I started recruiting on as a technical recruiter. And I've kind of fully dove into that space. So yeah, with the connection that I've had through Damien, I'm constantly looking to expand my network. Obviously, the IT market, as we've all probably seen, and I'm sure you guys have seen from probably getting hit up on LinkedIn and, voicemails and text messages and emails from, all the recruiters out there. But the market's incredibly active. We've seen that there's tons of remote work. We've seen that, there has been a decent amount of inflation with wages. We've seen that wages have come up. So it's really kind of shifted more so now into a candidates market. When COVID first started, we were calling it a hiring managers market because they were the ones that had the leverage. They were able to be a lot more selective with who they were hiring. Now it's kind of the inverse. I mean, the managers are having the tough time, finding, talent, and the candidates are the ones that are able to entertain multiple different opportunities and, find the right tech stack, find the right culture, find the right compensation. So great market to take advantage of. And yeah, with that, here's some of my contact information. I will go ahead and copy and paste it and put it into the chat box as well. But really looking to expand my network. We know oftentimes that recruiters might not always deal with people in the best, most professional way. You know, a lot of times there's kind of that transactional feel to it. Obviously here at Gravity, we understand that, you know, we're dealing with people's livelihoods. You know, making a career move is obviously a really big decision, and there's a lot of factors that come along with that. So really like to take the time to, you know, have initial phone calls with candidates, really understand what the candidate's looking for, you know, what you're looking for, whether that's from a technology perspective, culture fit, you know, certain industry, contract versus direct hire, whatever it may be. Really taking the time to understand the skills, goals, and interests of the candidate. That way we can kind of go, you know, get together with some of our other teams, you know, other offices, other markets, and really present the opportunities that are going to be best aligned for you and are not going to be a waste of your time. Because oftentimes we do find that, you know, recruiters are reaching out with opportunities, but you know, few and far between are they actually really aligned with what the candidate's looking for. So in a very saturated market, while there's a lot of recruiters and a lot of companies that do what we do, that's kind of the differentiated approach that we like to take is really being candidate centric. And then on top of that, we do monetarily incentivize the IT ecosystem for candidate referrals. We found that, you know, just like a lot of things in this life, I mean, you know, typically good software developers know other good software developers, you know, data scientists, data analysts, cloud engineers, whatever it may be. So we will actually, on the permanent placement side, if you were to refer us a friend or colleague and simply, you know, share a resume, contact information, and that person were to get a job with one of our clients, we would actually, on a direct hire side, we would share 10% of the placement fee that we collect as a company. So depending on the person's salary, anywhere in the ballpark of $1,000 to, I think, you know, $3,500, kind of ballpark. And I think year to date, we've paid out a little over $300,000 in referral bonuses. And, you know, simply by sharing a contact, you know, an email address, a phone number, and then, you know, we do the rest. We get in contact with the person and kind of get them in a position to interview and, you know, get set up for a job. So that's kind of another thing to kind of keep in mind. But I will go ahead and like I said, copy and paste this information here and throw it into the chat box. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message, send me an email, text message, pigeon carrier message, whatever it may be. However you want to get in touch, maybe reach out to Damien if you know have his contact. He can get us in touch as well. Don't know if that kind of might have just opened up a door there for you, Damien. But regardless, however we can be a resource to any of you guys, I'm always looking to build new relationships. Currently working on lots of fully remote .NET positions, full stack, some with large enterprise clients, SaaS clients in the healthcare space. So yeah, best of luck to everyone out there that's either currently working and you know, wishing you all the best in your current position, and anybody that might be you know, active in the search, wishing all the best for you guys, and looking forward to hopefully building some new relationships here in the future.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you everybody that came. We're you know, I love Gravity IT. I you know, I helped them with a couple of different things, and they helped me back. But you know what they do help me is to well, I'm lucky enough that I was going to say they help me get people like Elahn and Cecil, but I've known for Cecil so long that he feels sorry if I ever say come on over and present, and he doesn't. And so what he's doing is a pity call and coming over to the oldest .NET group in all of Southeast United States, and he knows he's a rock star. But I'm going to tell you, if you don't know Cecil, then you'd have to just look at some kind of like Microsoft event, and he'll be there. He's the best presenter. If I was successful, if I had done things right in my life, I would be Cecil Phillips. You know? So you know, Elahn, I instantly love you because you're with Cecil and he brought you up. But you know, I'm gonna one day maybe I become you, but until then, hopefully one day I become Cecil. But on that, and because right now he's shy, even though he gets all these compliments all the time from me. Yes, exactly. I think it's time to get some real knowledge. I love .NET 6. I like .NET. It's paid me my salary, but oh my God, .NET 6. Cecil, Elahn, help us. What can we learn? How do we do this? What can we do? Tell us.
You know, I love I love coming to this user group, but like every time Damien like gasses me up, like, I got to make sure that I'm clean like every time I come here. But thank you all for coming. Alana and I are, are definitely really excited to come and meet with you all today. We're actually going to do something new and different, at least something I've personally never done before, and I don't think Alana's done this before either. So I am in Fort Lauderdale. I'm here. I'm local in Florida. Alana is on the West Coast. She is in California.
California, yes, California.
In California.
So 3 hours behind.
So, I guess I don't want to say thanks to the pandemic because that's a weird thing to say. But because of the pandemic, now we're able to do these virtual meetups, and we all don't have to be in the same space to like collaborate and do stuff together. So my co-host is on the other side of the country, and we're going to do some demos and some slides and stuff like that. We're going to use Visual Studio Live Share. We're going to be coding in the same place across the country. Cool. So hopefully the demo gods and the internet gods are nice to us today and nothing freaks out too much. But I figured, it's, again, I haven't been here for a long time. And, again, like Damien and Dave and good friends of ours. So I'm like, let's do something special and hopefully it works. If it doesn't work, I'm sorry, I apologize. But that's what we're going to try and do today. So with that being said,
keeping it spicy.
Yeah,
we're going to keep it spicy. So Elahn, why don't you introduce yourself and just, because I don't think you're familiar with this crowd before. You've been to this user.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell folks who you are?
Hi, everybody. So my name is Elahn. I started learning C# and .NET back in August of 2020, so mid-pandemic. Since then, I've just been continuing the journey. I met Cecil. I met so many great people who have helped me with my journey. And I have actually a YouTube channel now called Elahn Codes, and I'm just documenting my experience and blogging as well. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think it's great when we can, like share the experience with kind of everybody. We'll have like the experienced folks and the folks that are learning. And again, because we're in this space of everyone being remote and, we got Zoom and Teams and Slack and 10 other chat apps that we're all using and we have installed on our machines, we all kind of collaborate and do some cool stuff. Yes. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Alahn, why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
Okay.
And like I said, we're going to be doing some live share stuff. So I hope it works. We're already connected to
yes.
But we're gonna go through some slides first because slides are important. At least somebody said that. I didn't say that. But we're gonna set the context and then we're gonna dive into some stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. So go ahead and share your screen real quick, and then we'll get the show on the road.
Awesome.
All right, we're gonna request control.
Okay.
And, does this work? Am I clicking the thing?
Yes.
Am I? It's not moving.
This is the future. I saw the mouse move some.
Yeah, I see your mouse.
How you do?
It's just the mouse went the other side of the world. It didn't go west to east to west, it went west to east.
I moved it.
Oh yeah, you're clicking.
Okay. So that's demo one. Get the slides to work. Okay, so that's where we're at. All right. So what we're going to talk about today, .NET 6 is new. New as in like it just came out in last November. And there's tons of amazing stuff that's in there. So within the next hour, we're going to spend some time talking about some of the things that we think are interesting within the space of .NET 6. Our hour is definitely not enough time to talk about everything. But hopefully from what you see, you'll be a little inspired to go in and check it out and kind of see, maybe some of these things might be interesting for you and some of the things that you're building inside your applications and solutions today. And I guess while we're doing that, while me and Elahn are talking, if folks are in the chat, why don't you go ahead and drop like a little message, say, hey, I'm using .NET 6. I've never tried it before. I don't know what it is. I've tried these things. I think it'd be really cool to just kind of get some context about where people's experience levels are, right?
Right.
So that'll be cool. All right, so what's in .NET 6, or at least what we're going to talk about regarding .NET 6 is going to be a couple of things. So, I know most of us, when we say .NET and C# are like synonymous. I know there's VB people out there. Don't get mad at me. We acknowledge Visual Basic too, but let's be honest. You know what I mean? There's C#, there's F#, and then there's somewhere at the bottom there's Visual Basic. I'm just being honest. That's all. Don't get mad.
Shots fired.
Shots fired. I think this is going to be that type of talk today. So I'm just telling you, being very honest about it. We're going to talk about C# 10. We're going to talk about some of the new APIs and enhancements and stuff that they have inside of the framework. ASP.NET Core and EF Core 6 updates. Elahn has some amazing demos that show up .NET MAUI, and then we'll have a respectable conversation about hot reload and what it is and what it isn't. So that should be pretty cool too. All right, so why don't we go ahead and get started. All right, so .NET 6. So one of the cool things I think about .NET 6 is this is their long-term support release. So if folks aren't familiar with how the new release cycle happens with .NET and how that LTS train happens, pretty much every other release of .NET is going to be LTS. LTS stands for long-term support. That means that for an extended period of time, you're going to be able to rely that this is going to be around, it's going to be supported, you know what I mean? And it's going to be something that you're not going to have to worry about it changing too often. At least that's what they say, right? What happens right now is that every November, I think ever since .NET 5, which happens not last year, 2021, but 2020, every year we're going to have a new version of .NET. It's going to come out every November. And every November, they also have like the big release, which is like .NET Conf, and they talk about all the new features, and usually the new versions of Visual Studio come out, and then also the new versions of .NET, plus some preview features will come out with it too. So 2020, we got .NET 5, 2021, last year, November, just a couple of months ago, we got .NET 6. And now this year, in November, we're gonna have .NET 7. I mean, for me, I don't know how y'all feel about it, but for me, that train is going a little fast. You know what I mean? Like I still have things that I'm trying to update from 5 to 6, and then they already started to talk about 7. But again, that's why I love the LTS releases, because hey, I can build on top of the LTS release, and I can have a little bit of confidence that, when the next version comes out, they're not gonna like completely drop this version, right? And I'm still gonna be able to get support. I'm still gonna be able to call somebody on the phone and be like, I have a problem. Could you please fix this for me? Which I think is great. But along with .NET 6, we got a lot of cool stuff. Again, we have new versions of C# and F#. This is the first version that has Apple Silicon support. So that means that if any of you are running M1 Macs, I don't have an M1 Mac, but if you do, you can now compile, build, and run your applications on Mac OS, which is important, which is very cool. One of the things also too, and you'll see this as we go through our presentation, is that they really try to focus on simplifying the framework, or simplifying what it takes for you to get started, for you to start building applications, so that now your time to productivity is a little bit shorter, which I think is important, right? For those of you that have been around a little while, you've always heard, oh, .NET is complex, and it's hard to teach new people. And why do we have all of these things in the language, and like, what do these things mean? But again, as you kind of look at it from, all the way back to .NET 3.1 up to where we are today with 6 and 7 preview, slowly but surely, like we're starting to get a simplified version of .NET that's a little bit easier for us to teach in schools and, kind of have other people adopt. Now, why is that important? If you think about, longevity and legacy, like I've been in .NET since, 2008, right? So I graduated college and I've been in .NET for pretty much my entire career. And so for someone that's invested their livelihood on a framework, you'd like to know that it's going to keep going for a little while, right? You'd like to know that we can not only have, the application that we're building supported, but then our future customers, which are going to be those students and those folks that are coming from the future, coming from college and high school and things of that nature. It's important for us to know that, they are going to be able to still be supported. So that's one of the reasons why I'm excited about it. Okay, all right, so let's pop over to the next slide. Alrighty. Yeah, this remote slide thing is kind of interesting. All right, so first thing we're going to talk about, C#10. And why don't you guys tell me, for those of you that are in the chat, again, how many of you are using C#10 today? Or what version of C# are you guys using and familiar with? That'd be great for you guys to know. But with C#10, we got a lot of cool features. We have things like global and implicit usings, which I'm going to show off, which I think is great. File scope namespaces, we have record structs, extended properties. We have more support for like nullability, which is interesting too, because also in C#7, we're not going to show that today, but they do have support for this thing called the dammit operator. Have y'all heard about the dammit operator? If you haven't, the dabbing operator is essentially like 2 exclamation marks, bang, bang, right? And that's why they call it like the dabbing operator or the bang, bang operator. And essentially that's one of those things that they're adding to improve and increase like support for nullability and things of that nature, right? So that's cool. All right, why don't we start off with a really quick demo? Let's start our first demo and see what happens. Now, again, Elahn and I are on Visual Studio Live Share. I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll see. We're going to find out, right? This is going to be like a first time for me, her, and maybe for you guys too. So we'll see how it goes.
Fingers crossed.
Let's cross our fingers. Okay. Is my camera frozen? Is my camera on?
Your camera is frozen, but I thought you were just being really still, which was really impressive. No, it's just that the camera's frozen.
Oh, that's anyway. You don't need to look at me anyway. Look at the code. Code's important. We'll figure out the camera situation later. Okay. Now, what you're looking at here, hopefully you should see my my mouse situation. Oh, wrong window. Here we go. All right. Hopefully you should see me kind of clicking around in there. All right, great. That looks good. Now, what we're looking at is a very typical C# application, right? .NET Run, it says hello world, yada, yada, like nothing new and exciting there. What I want to do is slowly start to peel the orange, I guess is what they say, or peel back the layers and see how much code can I strip out of this simple console write-line file. Okay, so one of the first features I want to show you, and this feature is actually not in C# 10, it's actually in C#, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something like that, but it's actually called static usings, right? Have you ever heard about static usings? I could do something like this. Using static system.console, right? Now, when I do that, now I could start to, there we go. I'm going to put that little thing there. And now when I do that, anything that's static off of that type is going to be available inside of my program to use. So now that means that I could delete this word console, right? And my application still works, right? So that one is called static usings. Again, that's not a C# 10 feature, but again, my goal here is to strip away as much code as I possibly can to show you how this stuff works. Okay, another thing we hear about C# a lot is almost every app that's been ever made in C#, we always say that it's by default, you always start at least 1 tab in. And that's because you have all of these namespaces. Every file has at least 1 namespace. And so that means by default, your code automatically starts indented to the right before you've even done anything, before you've even become productive or started creating classes or anything of the sort, your stuff is already right justified. So one of the things that they've introduced in C# 10 is the ability to have file scopes namespaces, which I think is pretty cool. So that means that I can delete this, can delete that one. And if I format, how do we do this thing? Shift Control P. Oops, wrong window. Trying to run my command. My commands don't want to run. Format. There we go. Right. And now, if you take a look at it, I have just removed the need for nesting. Right now, that namespace just applies to the entire file. Right. And again, my application still works. But now, again, I'm slowly trying to peel back the amount of stuff that I have in here. Right. Now, for folks that usually like to have more than 1 namespace in a file, I don't know why you do that. Please don't do it. No one does it. And then everyone that sees it is going to just get mad at you. It's weird. It's weird.
Clutter.
Don't do it. You know what I mean? We all know we have 1 namespace declaration per file. And so by default now, again, this is what we can do. Okay. What else can we do to remove some of the code that's inside of our application? Now, another really cool C# feature, let me know if you've heard about this or not, is called top-level statements, right? With top-level statements, the entry point of your application does not need to have a program main, right? If you remember, the whole purpose of the program main is for the fact of the compiler or the runtime knowing where does your application start? Like, what's the entry point? What's going to boot it up? What's going to get it running? Where do I begin, right? Hence, we have that convention of we have a void main method that accepts string parameters. So what if I didn't need to have this anymore? So that means that I could start to delete some code, right? So I could delete this stuff, say bye-bye, bye code. Don't you like deleting code? It makes me feel good. It's like I'm going on a diet or something, right? And now, using top-level statements, you know what I mean? And then just kind of removing some of that stuff, if I do .NET run, my code should still run, right? I have so much less code than I did before, but we can go even further, right? We're gonna do a little bit better than that. I have a whole bunch of these using statements here that are at the top of the file, right? What if I can get rid of these? But then I wouldn't have any code in the file, right? What exactly my code do? But let me show you. I want you, maybe not right now, but whenever you go back to your office, whenever you go back to Visual Studio, I want you to look at your using statements and tell me how many of you have system link, system IO, system threading, et cetera, system.link on the top of your files. And tell me how many of those C# files do you have with those same declarations spread all across your code. I'm probably gonna guess almost all of them, right? That's probably the case. So wouldn't it be nice if we can just have this declared one time and have some of those common things kind of just automatically be the default inside of our applications? That would be fantastic, right? That would mean less typing for me and less lines of code per file, right? It kind of just makes sense. So that's how global usings kind of come into play. And I'm gonna actually show you this really quickly. So I'm gonna create a global usings.cs file, okay? It doesn't need to be called global usings. You can call it whatever you want.
Cecil, can everybody else? I'm not seeing the screen being updated.
Oh, you're not? Hey, Elahn, could you follow me?
Yeah.
Could you right click on my name in live share there on the right side and click follow? Yes. Yeah, let's do that.
Because I was seeing you remove lines. Now you remove Cecil. Okay. Now he's not typing anything.
Sorry about that.
Hey,
no, what I mean is now you're not typing anything. Now it's real much.
All right, great.
Keep going, Cecil.
So that's not a C# thing. We just showed you a live share thing. So now for y'all that have not used live share before, because I'm not on Elahn's computer, I'm on somewhere else. She has to like follow me. Unless she follows me, I'm gonna click on some different files and she may not see it. But now she's following me. I could click around and she should, on her screen, you should see exactly where I am. So there you go. Hopefully no one got dizzy by me clicking around to it. Now, what I want to do is I want to remove these from here, right? And I want to put them in here, right? Does this work? No, it doesn't work. I got the right squiggly line. Red squiggly lines means it does not know what exactly it wants me to do. So for us to use the global usings feature, I can put all my usings in a particular file, but then now at the top, I'm going to type the word global, right? Does that make sense? Is that the right way to do it? No, we don't do it that way. I'm going to cheat. Global, right? Like that. That's better. That's more efficient. And now I have these global usings inside of my file, right? So now when I go back, red squiggly line is gone. That's fantastic. .NET run. My application is running. I have one line of code. It says 3, but you know what? If you take the spaces out, let's take out the spaces. There we go. I have one line of code that I've gone down from, I don't know how much ever you saw me have before. The reason why this is important, what you've seen is that we've taken a collection of features, kind of put them all together. And now we've been able to kind of, again, we're peeling the onion. I think that's what they call it, right? Like you peel the onion back, you peel the layers off. So now we could just get to whatever is important, right? So now I can continue writing. I continue writing code. I could say, ints, let's create an array of stuff. You know what I mean? And my array has, a new int of stuff in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, right? And then I could do stuff dot. There we go. I can do stuff dot where or whatever the case is. Come on. It's not what is happening here. Is this saved? Yes, that's saved. That's working. My IntelliSense is not working. Okay, there we go. Took a second. But now I could do stuff dot where. Now my methods are popping up, right? But these are extension methods that have been included because I have system.link over here inside of my global usings file. So that means that I can open any number of files and I can have those usings automatically included. That means the upper part of my .cs files are going to be a lot slimmer. That means that as we're scrolling through our code with thousands and thousands of lines, hopefully it's a little bit easier because now we're not going to have as much front matter because these usings now can be centralized in a single place, which I think is cool, right? So I think that's awesome. Okay, now, what if I tell you I can delete this global usings file? In C#10, if you open the chproj file by default, you're going to see this thing that says implicit usings. right? And implicit usings is actually pretty cool. What it does is that it says, well, okay, we have global usings, which means we can centralize all of these different using statements. I'm sorry, global usings. But with implicit usings, based on the project type, the runtime is going to infer a certain amount of automatic using statements. So if I do, right now this says disabled, if I enable it, right? And again, this is in your CS proj file. Now, because this is a console app, it's going to infer what are the using statements most people need for a console application. So then I can probably delete some of these too. I don't need system.link. I don't need the system thing. I need this one because this is a static using. This is non-standard, right? I'm going to keep that. But again, if I look at my code should still work, right? So if I go back to stuff, and I'm going to say that now my IntelliSense is being slow. Come on, Mr. IntelliSense, don't be nice to me. All right, let's do this. Let's clear this. Let's clear this thing. .NET builds, super quick. Boom, 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 boom. You've done what you need to do, right? And now when I say stuff dot, okay, I just want you to believe me. It works. It's just a little mad at me right now because sometimes this happens. Enable, yeah, that's on. It takes a little second to kick in once you do that thing. But anyway, now I don't have the need to have some of these usings in here, right? I can have that inside of the separate file. And now my usings, again, will kind of just be implicit. Now, what other usings can you have, right? Like if you take a look inside of this, you'll see this says Microsoft.net.sdk. So if this was Microsoft.web.sdk, that happens whenever you open like an ASP.NET Core file. You're going to guess a lot of those common things like system.text.json are going to be in there by default. You know, system.http is going to be in there by default. And a lot of these things are just going to be there by default. If you're curious, like me, sometimes you like to, you might want to go down a level below. If you open this OBJ folder, in .NET, you have a bin folder, you have an OBJ folder. If you open your OBJ folder, somewhere inside of here, you're going to see something that has the name of your application, .global usings. I didn't create this file. This file gets automatically generated for you. So when I click on this file, now you should see these are the usings that the runtime gives you by default. Again, I didn't create this. This is auto-generated. Look, it even says auto-generated at the top in that little comment section right there, right? But again, if this was an ASP.NET file, if this was a MAUI file, if this was some other type of application, you'd have an expanded set of using statements. And now that's how we can have very minimal code that looks stuff like this, where I could just do stuff that, I don't know why it doesn't want to work. It's being mad at me. Anyway, that's why we can do stuff like this, where we can write code that doesn't have any namespaces. It doesn't have a ton of usings on the top. And we can just get started very quickly. Again, like I said in the beginning, your time to productivity becomes so much faster, more efficient because of things like this. So there you go. Hopefully that makes sense. If folks have any questions, also feel free to drop questions in the chat. Damien, if you see any questions, let me know. I can pause for a cause and we can talk about it. But hopefully that makes sense to folks.
A lot of people are excited about what you're doing. They're utilizing,
that, Damien, I can't hear you. I see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you. Maybe it's me. Okay, I can hear you now. Sorry about that.
Let me see.
I can hear you now.
Hello.
I got you. Damien?
So a lot of people, there's a question. That's a good one. Is there going to be .NET Core 6?
No. So after .NET Core 3.1, the branding and the naming has changed. So the branding and the naming has changed. So from 5 onwards, until they decide to change it again, from 5 onwards, it is just .NET, right? So again, if you kind of look at the lineage of the framework, we start with .NET Framework all the way up to, I think, 4.8.2, I think was the last one. Then we had .NET Core, which went all the way up to 3.1. And then after 3.1, we skipped 4 because 4 is not a real number. And we went to .NET 5. We're currently at .NET 6, which is the current LTS version, as I mentioned. And then coming in November 2022, we're going to have .NET 7. So .NET Core is not a thing. .NET is a thing. But for folks that might be a little confused about it, .NET Core and .NET technically are the same thing, right? So if your thing runs on .NET Core, it will run on .NET, right? So your .NET 3.1 applications will run on .NET 5 and .NET 6. They will not run on .NET Framework. So that's where like a little bit of 3 different names, 2 of them are the same, 1 is different. It's confusing, I know. I didn't do it. I'm not in charge of naming. That's just how the world is. We just have to accept it and move on with life.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think that's the famous saying, right, Cecil? There's 2 problems with computer science: figuring out whether you need to get rid of cache, naming things, and off by 1 problems, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And there was a comment from Diego saying, didn't VB.NET have globals using a while back? I think you're thinking of QBasic, that before Cecil. So,
definitely before my time, man. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe they did. I haven't touched Visual Basic in a very long time, but I don't know. Maybe it did. I'm not sure. But I can tell you, if you think about, we're not going to do this today, but if we have a longer conversation about the evolution of languages all borrow from each other. You know what I mean? Like, I'll give you an example. C# was the first language to have async await. Now it's in Python, and it's in JavaScript, and it's on all these other places. You know what I mean? Some of these functional languages had things like map and fold and reduce and things of that nature, and that inspired LINQ. That's inside of .NET today. Pattern matching was in a lot of other languages. Now pattern matches is in .NET, right? Like we have like this relationship within the community that we kind of just share features as we go across the board, right? Oh, Damien has some cool stuff. I'm going to bring it in my app. You know what I mean? Elahn has some cool stuff. I'm going to bring it in my app. And that's, that's kind of how we just evolve and get better. So yeah, anyway.
I love it. Colt says, with this new version of .NET, should he get rid of his framework 4.5 for life tattoo?
I mean, listen, buddy. Listen, man. I'll tell you.
Don't do it.
You know what? I'm a fan of history. So you know what? You should rock that with pride. That's what I think you should do.
It was a moment in time.
Yeah, rock it with pride, man. Like, and nice. Then let people know that you're a vet and you deserve some respect. That's how I feel about it.
Right. Glenn says depends what the tattoo is. I don't know. I think it'll be fine wherever it is.
That's funny. That's funny.
Nice.
All right, Elahn, why don't you head back to the slides and let's keep it rolling. Rolling,
right.
rolling, rolling, rolling. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. That was the first demo. We're gonna have some other demos. We're gonna show off some minimal API stuff, and we're also gonna show off some Maui stuff. But until then, let me go back over here. Do I still have control over these slides? Can I still click the clicky thing?
Yes.
I can click the clicky thing. Great, fantastic. All right, so we saw some of those new features in C#, which is cool. But .NET is bigger than C#. Some people might argue otherwise, but it's bigger than C#. And so there's tons of other really cool things that happen in the framework. One of the biggest things that we got, one of the most underrated features, in my opinion, is support for natural types for Lambda functions, which when you say it, it's just like, that's weird. Like, I don't know what that means, right? It's not the most like attractive phrase, you know what I mean? But what it actually does is, if you kind of think about how we create funcs, like func of t's and action of t's and things of that nature, ways to create function pointers, and then now we could pass functions in as parameters to other functions, right? Like that's what the func of t and the action of t types kind of enable. Now, whenever we have anonymous functions, prior to C#10, it was very difficult for you to assign that to like a non-typed variable. When I say a non-typed variable, I'm sure you've seen people do var x is equal to blah, and then what happens is that the compiler is going to infer what var is based on the right side, right? A little bit of compiler mumbo jumbo, but you'll see what I'm talking about later. Prior to that, you can say var function is equal to the name of an anonymous function. You couldn't do that because the compiler and the runtime would be like, I don't know what you're trying to do. I don't have enough information. It's weird, right? Don't do that. But now with C#10 and .NET 6, we have the ability to do that. And that actually enables minimal APIs. If you've ever seen minimal APIs and you see what the syntax looks like, the reason why you can create those anonymous functions and pass them in the way that they do and have variable overloads, I guess you could say, different return types, different parameters and things of that nature, is because of these natural types for lambdas. Now the compiler will generate, oh, hey, I know what this is. I'll generate a type for you. Now we'll continue work. And again, we'll see a little bit more of this as we go on. We have improvements for link. Link had a lot of new operators, which is really cool. And if folks are familiar with like the range and index operators that were introduced a couple of years ago, now you can do range and indices. So you can specify ranges of values inside of your collections. So if I say, hey, I want to get like this subrange, you know, ranges work like they're dot dot and a number, or a number dot dot. Like that's how you specify them in .NET. Now you could say, hey, give me the range of things, and you can get those values back versus like having to, you know, create some extension method or something like that. It's quite cool to have that out of the box. So better support for system.text.json, which is always really good. You know, they have some more performance source generators. We're not going to talk about source generators today, but source generators are essentially a way that you could write code to generate more code. So it's almost like a way for you to like code away like some of like the boilerplate stuff you wanted to do. But through source generators, now we're able to get more efficient JSON parsing, you know, also more efficient logging too, which is important. You know, we have support for OpenTelemetry. One of my favorite things, OpenTelemetry and OpenTelemetry metrics. If folks aren't familiar with that, maybe Dave and I could we could talk about that sometime with some container stuff too. That could be cool. But OpenTelemetry is essentially a way for us to collect metrics, tracing, and logging in a very open standard way, which is great. And then support for HTTP3. Preview support for HTTP3, not fully supported support, but there's preview support for HTTP3 and OpenSSL3, which is going to be important when you start to see some of these things kind of start to proliferate a little bit more throughout our community. Okay. Trying to click the slide. Move slide. Slide doesn't want to move. Okay. Now Elon's going to talk to us.
I was clicking, nothing was happening.
Okay.
Stepping on the screen.
She's going to talk to us about .NET course, ASP.NET Core 6.
Yeah, so for minimal APIs, as Cecil was talking about, we now have top level statements and global usings, as well as Lambda. And I'm going to actually show you a demo that I have. Sorry if you hear my dog in the back, he's a wild pug. So I'm going to minimize this and show you what I have for minimal APIs. The first one I'm going to show you is the very bare minimum of what a minimal API looks like. I'm just going to.
So I'm guessing what you did you just use the template? Did you just do .NET new API and then it just created it? Or like, how did you get started, I guess, in what, or like,
right. So I went into Visual Studio and I have a kind of a screenshot as well for everyone to see. So when creating a minimal API, you want to make sure that you toggle. One moment.
Is your screen frozen?
Get this out of the way. Just a tad.
Okay.
Let's see, maybe if I can bring this over. So one key feature is that when creating a new web API using a minimal API, you want to make sure that the checkbox for use controllers is unchecked, and it kind of cuts off, at least in Visual Studio for Mac, it cuts off unchecked to use minimal APIs. So a key feature of minimal APIs is the fact that API controllers and startup classes are no longer really needed. So, which is awesome. And then once you click through to create, you get this bad boy.
Nice. So now I'm looking at this file. I'm like, this doesn't look so minimal. Like there's a lot of stuff in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So why don't we kind of just go through and talk about what some of this stuff is?
Right. So I guess at its bare, let's see, Visual Studio is acting funky for me. So we have, and this is actually the to-do app, to-do API. So we have our var builder, which establishes the web application for Create Builder. We have our builder services. And honestly, for the builder services, that's a bit extra. It's extra just so we can have that Swagger support. And I'll show you what it looks like when that's enabled. And for those who don't know, Swagger is used to generate API documentation. But at its most bare, you will see, I can make a space to isolate what we really have. The main points of code is the var builder, which is one line, the var app builder .build app, the app.use HTTPS redirection, and the app.mapGet. And this is where we can establish our endpoint, for our index page, and we can send it to hello world. And I can run it. Let's see. My VS Code is just acting so wonky right now, so please bear with me.
No, and that's fine. So for folks that may or may not be familiar with .NET Core 3.1 or .NET 5, whenever you created an API, there was this thing called a startup.cs file. Again, if you guys have created APIs or apps with that before, you may not have seen it. And inside of your startup.cs file, there was a configure and a configure service method, right? Two separate methods, configure services. And essentially what has happened, and again, if we kind of think about it, configure ran before configure services, like sequentially. Nothing ran between it. So it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, well, why don't we just flatten it, right? So now with minimal APIs, they've essentially just gotten rid of the whole concept of a startup.cs file. So in configure services, where dependency injection happens and they create, you add your services, transient, singleton, scoped, so on and so forth, they've just kind of added it onto like the application builder, the thing that you use to compose your apps. Just like in the configure method, that's where you specify your routes, or you're going to say something like add a GraphQL, add OData, add API versioning, add whatever it is that you want to add, right? I want to use these things and I want to map my routes. So now that's all just been compressed into one file. But in addition to that, now you can notice that, for instance, if you look at line 21, off of that app builder, I could say map get, I can say map post, I can say map put. And those functions that are at the end, if you notice that we have those Lambda functions, again, the reason that we can do that is because we have those natural types for Lambdas, that feature that I spoke about a little while ago, because before we couldn't do that. But now that we have that feature enables us to create like this minimal syntax for writing APIs. Now, to be fair, because some people ask this question, this is not a replacement for controllers. You can still use controllers. It's not a replacement for MDC or anything of the case, but it is in addition to, because, in software, we like new stuff. So this is in addition to the stuff that we've had. So because of that, whenever you create your application, like Elahn was showing you, you can hit the checkbox and it'll create it this way, or you could, toggle it on and off, and you will get controllers. But essentially, it's doing a lot of the same things with a lot less syntax, but also there's some, some gotchas that you just have to pay attention to. Okay.
And right now, yes. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me as well. So we have the hello world, so it shows that hello world is also working. And then I'm going to enter swagger.index.html. And here we see all of our APIs and endpoints. And for the get, we can test it out and hit execute. And there we see our information with the code 200, which means it's successful. And then so on with the map get, map post, and map put.
So essentially, we have like a place that we can come and play with the API, almost like what's the thing we used to have? Remember when we had WSDLs? There was a thing in Visual Studio that would let you call the endpoint from the WSDL in Visual Studio. I think it was like add service reference something, and it like generated a thing. Can't remember what it was called, but something like that.
I think the WSDLs had its own page that did this. Thank goodness for Swagger. I love Swagger. I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, there was a page where you could, do the testing locally and make these calls. But now that we have Rust, things like OpenAPI, which is implemented by Swagger, and I think there was another thing that kind of no one really supports. These types of tools enable you to get a little bit more introspection. Like, what types of my API return? What types of status codes does it return? What types of media types and content negotiation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now we can kind of like look at that Swagger file and like see some of those types of things. But again, the whole point of us showing you this is that you can do this with regular controllers using the same Swagger package, or you can do it with minimal APIs, which is great.
Right.
We have a couple. I don't know if it's the right time. We have a couple of questions. I think we can leave those to the end because I think they're more architectural questions and things like that. What do you think, Seth?
Yeah, well, let's go through a couple more slides, and then we'll have some more time. We could dive into some more questions and stuff.
Awesome.
We're gonna be hanging around. We're not in a rush, so at least I'm not in a rush. So we could take some time and answer some more questions later. Okay, Blazor. So Blazor, for those of you that don't know, Blazor is the .NET equivalent of like a front-end framework. So it's the equivalent of Vue.js or React for JavaScript. And it runs on WebAssembly, or you can run it on the server, but no one really runs it on the server. I don't know why we have that, but most folks want to run Blazor inside of the browser, and it runs in a thing called WebAssembly. Now, what WebAssembly does is it allows you to compile binaries, your .c files, your .wasm files, your .o, and those types of things, ship it to the browser and have it run in a sandbox. So now I could do things like I could do DOM manipulation. I could do, connect to the IndexedDB or local storage or some of those things that are built into the browser using .NET through WASM, and that's enabled through Blazor. Now, Blazor's not new. Blazor's been around for a little while. But we've gotten some really cool features that folks have been asking for that didn't exist before. Some of those are JavaScript initializers. What is a JavaScript initializer? You can think about them as like lifecycle methods. So before and after your components start up or shut down, I have the ability to run some initialization code. Why might I want to do that? Blazor runs in the browser and it interacts with the browser's web APIs, to lack of better words. But you still need JavaScript, right? Like Blazor essentially is interoperating through WASM, connecting to JavaScript. You might have some JavaScript libraries or utilities that you want to include, and those things might need to initialize themselves. You can think about map controls, right? Like if I wanted to use Google Maps, if you all have ever used it, you know that it has like an initialization feature or function. Like you have to initialize the map and then you like stick it in the DOM somewhere. This is something that you could do in that JavaScript initializer. I could say start it up, and then by the time my Blazor app boots, now I could attach it. So again, and then when it shuts down, I could shut it down and I can clean it up. We also have support for query string support. So that meant that whenever you were passing query strings before, Blazor couldn't read it. You can read them now. It couldn't access content that was in the head section of the HTML. So places where you have like your metadata or your title and those types of things, you can change them now, which is important. We have this feature called error boundaries. That's essentially like, it's a custom element, but it's like a container, right? And you can wrap a certain section of your component, and you could say, if an error happens here, don't crash my whole application, just like, keep it contextualized to this area, and then like swap in like some error text or something like that. But it won't like, it won't cascade those errors throughout my app and like, burn the house, because I like when my house is. And then also, which is an interesting feature, I don't know how many people are going to use this, but maybe some of you folks might like this. You can render Blazor from other JavaScript components. What does that mean? That means that if I wrote something in Blazor and I exported it, and you wrote something in Vue.js or React or Angular or whatever the case is, I can give you my output, right? My code, my Blazor wasm.js, I could give it to you. And then you could initialize my components from your React, Angular, Vue application. Name your JavaScript framework, whatever. So that means before, when Blazor was created, it was Blazor interoperability, plugging into JavaScript. Now we can do it the opposite way, where JavaScript, your JavaScript frameworks can call Blazor to do stuff. Why you might want to do that? Again, you might have applications that are already built with other frameworks. And maybe you might want to add some Blazor stuff to it. So now you can go, you could go both ways if you wanted to, right? Like you could kind of go back and forth. So that's pretty cool. Okay, let's keep it going. Entity framework, we don't have any entity framework demos, but we could talk about it for a little bit. There's a couple new improvements to entity framework. Entity framework being the data layer, I suppose, that we have in .NET. It used to be called an ORM, object relational mapper. It's kind of hard to call it that now because it does more than just like relational data. It now does, document-based data too, because now it supports things like Cosmos DB and maybe some other things in the future, which is really cool that aren't necessarily based on relationships. So, entity framework essentially is the data layer that we have, supports, SQL Server, Oracle, yada, yada, and then also the document model of Cosmos DB. So for that provided for Cosmos DB, a lot of cool features have been added. We can now do like raw SQL queries. Cosmos DB does SQL, and for folks that don't know, or it has a Cosmos flavored version of SQL. So Cosmos, you can type in your raw SQL statements, you can execute it. It has better support for like mapping your entities, which is cool. It has improved support for save points. Does anyone know what save points are? I only learned about this when .NET 6 came out. Do any SQL Server folks here know what save points are? No?
And it's not like places you can touch me, right? No, that's not.
No,
I'm sorry. I'm looking for people in the chat. I don't know. I didn't realize my mic was off. Okay.
No, that's fine. So save points essentially are, so we have transactions, right? With transactions, we can commit, we can roll back transactions. What save points are, essentially it's like checkpointing. So you could say, I've done a thing, save it. I've done a thing, save it. And then you can give it a name. Is my camera frozen again? I hate this camera. All right, so you can do things and you could save, save the steps as you go along. So you could say, hey, I've saved the products, checkpoint. I've saved the orders, checkpoint. I've saved the receipts, checkpoint. Commit my transaction, right? And so what that means is that let's say I've done 2 steps out of 3, third one fails, I could roll back to that specific checkpoint, or I could roll back all of it, right? It just kind of gives me moments in time where I could roll back my data as I'm kind of going through it. Now that was actually supported in SQL Server. And it's also supported on the ADO.NET connection object. If folks still use ADO.NET, some of us are old like me and might know what that is. Entity Framework now has better support for that with some of those new things that are happening there. Compiled models is really cool. Compiled models are essentially, when you run Entity Framework, it looks at your types, it looks at your models that you've specified, and it has to compile it to create your database tables, and it has to create some representation of it. That's why you'll notice whenever your app spins up the first time and your database isn't created, it takes a little while for some of those things to happen, right? Now with compiled models, it speeds that up a little bit. So that's almost just like a speed improvement. You don't have to do anything to turn it on. It just kind of works. You know what I mean? And, it's great. And then last thing we're going to talk about is SQL Server temporal tables. So temporal tables are like good for auditing. So if, again, let's say we're talking about customers, what the temporal table does is going to save every action or every change that you've committed on that database. So if you think about it, if I've added people, it'll have like a record of that. If I've removed people, they're not in the database, but the temporal table has like that audit trail that I've removed some stuff. I've updated, I've done, I've edited this table. The temporal table is like a partner table along with your main table, and it's going to go ahead and do that. So anyway, we have support for that now in Entity Framework. Again, you can do it in SQL Server, but now NAD Framework will support it too, and save your record, and also generate the right SQL to update the temporal table.
Perfect. We had a quick question. How is save points different than nested transactions?
That's a good question. They're probably using nested transactions on the bottom. It's probably, I don't know for sure. I don't work on the SQL team, but it's probably using the same. It's not extremely different. I think it's just a cleaner API. And now, again, we have support for it inside of NAD Framework, which makes it even easier to use.
And someone wanted to know, did you say that ADO.net, first of all, does ADO.net still exist, has support for save points?
Yes, it does. It does. So what happens?
I sound great asking it, but those good questions are from Diego. Just his voice.
Yeah, Diego. It is on ADO.net, and it depends on the ADO.net provider. So again, going down the weeds a little bit, for ADO.net, you essentially have drivers for different databases, right? So there's an Oracle provider that Oracle supports. Microsoft does a SQLite and a SQL Server provider. There's providers for Postgres, for MySQL, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The ones that we ship, which would be SQLite and also SQL Server, have support for that API. I believe the Oracle folks have that too. I can't talk about the other folks because I don't know, but they might have support for it as well. But it's a standardized API. API is in like functions that you could call off of ADO.NET objects, off of the ADO.NET connection. So if you're familiar with SQL connection and things of that nature, you can call it off of there and just say, save brackets here, there, everywhere, right? Like you can just put stuff in there. And then when you're ready to roll back, you can say connection.rollback here, there, and wherever I was before, right? Like you could give it a name and then you can use that to go back and forth, which might be interesting for you. Okay, sounds good? Great.
Awesome.
Right. Now, I know this is what everyone came to talk about. So I'm going to sit back and learn and listen because I know this is what people really came to hear.
This is my favorite part of .NET 6. And honestly, as a Mac user, it's a little bit frustrating as well since it's not fully supported on Mac. I'll just throw that out there right at the beginning. But .NET MAUI is .NET multi-platform app UI. It is a cross-platform native UI. It is single project system, a single code base. And this is where you can deploy to multiple mobile and desktop devices. And as you can see, general availability later this year. I am dying for it to be released a lot sooner than that. But so to try .NET MAUI, you will want to use the Visual Studio Preview release. And you will also need to install Xcode 13. That took me like 3 days to install onto my MacBook. But still, it was worth it. Just seeing all these interesting features that I have not seen before. So I have an app already created. I already have a MAUI app created. I'm just going to close this out. And just to also mention that .NET MAUI is replacing Xamarin going forward in .NET 6 and onward. Okay, so let's go to this one. This is all I've been working on. Especially because I am in love with Blazor. And a part of .NET MAUI is the Blazor hybrid. And I can go on, I can get into that a little bit later on. But right now, I have the MAUI app open. It's a simple MAUI app. Once you're in the app, you will see a XAML file, which stores all your UI code. You will see your CS proj. And I'll get into that a little bit more. But a big part of it is your platforms folder, which stores all of the UI code for Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, and Windows. And it's basically where you can create this native app. And because you already have the platforms folder, the native app, what you're building gets funneled through these different platforms. So you can have this app that can be on Android, it can be on Windows, it can be on your iPhone, it can be on your MacBook, which is really awesome, especially because if you have an app that you care about, you want it to be as expansive as possible. So that's what makes me so excited about .NET MAUI. You also have your resources folder, which you can put all of your images in. And the great part about this folder is that in comparison to what we had before, you have these SVG files, which are images. But what's so cool about these images is that you don't need different versions of them for each platform. Like you don't need a different version for it to be on your iPhone or iOS or Android. It all gets stored into this resources folder, and it can expand as much as it needs to. Like it's all done. It makes it very easy, and it streamlines the process of building multi-platform apps. And it makes it more organized. It cleans it up a lot. And I was going to say, so in your CS proj, what's in your resources folder gets loaded into your CS proj file. And here we can see that like we have resources right here, the SVG, and then we can change colors if we want, like background colors for your app icon, and then also for your splash screen. And then I'm going to run the app so you guys can all see what it looks like. I've had so much fun and a bit of some frustration, not gonna lie. So I'm going to type out, or maybe make it easier on all of us. I have it copied and pasted.
So I'm curious, like what exactly did you have to do to get started? Because I'm not a mobile developer. I used to play with Xamarin like years ago. And I remember I had to like install a bunch of stuff. Like if I was doing Android, I had to install the Android SDKs and emulators and blah, 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 blah. And then I was on iOS and I had to install a bunch of stuff. Like, does this just install stuff for me, or do I have to like go down the route and like do all the things?
It was a process of trial and error, and that's something that I've been documenting as well. Especially since it's so new. I had to get the Xcode 13 installed. And again, that took some days. And it was just more so storage on my MacBook. And then I also had to update the Android SDKs. And sure, yeah, it was pretty much that. And then in order to create a new project, because I can't really open it on my Mac side, well, I have VS Mac, Visual Studio for Mac. It doesn't really have that option to create a new app like that. So I had to go into the terminal and I typed .NET new MAUI, and then I added the name. And that's how I was able to create this app on my MacBook.
Yeah, and I think that kind of goes into part of the title of the presentation, the good, the bad, and the ugly of .NET 6.
Yes.
Because today, so MAUI's in preview today. It's not GA, it's not officially supported. It's like a work in progress, and hopefully be up before the end of the year. But because of that, as you can imagine, Microsoft is a Windows company. Windows today has the better support. Via Visual Studio, you can go file new MAUI thing. VS for Mac, you cannot. Yes. So Elahn, hence, is in Visual Studio Code, and she's kind of going through the process and doing it the harder way, doing it in the command line and going through the process.
Not giving up though.
But then that's good to know, because it's like whenever you try a new thing, I think it's good to try and persevere and like go a level under. So that now whenever the GUI options are available and they don't work, I'm not saying they won't, but in case they don't, now you know where to look for things and try and figure out, well, how can I debug this and understand what the problem is?
Right. And that's fun too.
I'm a huge fan. We're getting kind of a little bit late today, and let me let you know that I am in love with Xamarin, and so therefore I want to know more about this, and I would love for you guys to come back and tell us about this part. Because this is where I think the whole world is going. That and the crypto and the NFTs and all that. So, and if you buy it now, you can get this picture you're seeing right now in as an NFT.
Sure.
But can we ask you some questions about the net, if you guys don't mind?
Yeah. I actually didn't even check the time, so thank you for checking us on that really quick.
Sure.
Yes,
We have been here for and change.
Sure.
Folks, why don't you guys go ahead and shoot out questions?
So I'm going to, we're going to take a little bit of surprise. I'll read some of the questions. I'll try to unmute everybody, and hopefully we'll be doing okay. Nobody will sound a bit strange, but you guys are all welcome to unmute yourselves. I've now turned it on. I want to hear from everybody. But I'll give some of the questions we've had so far. Some great questions from Diego and Ivan. You've answered some of them. Let me see if I had one of those. Let me see. Everybody wants to know about Maui, that. So I'll leave those in the instructions about, what are the differences? What's the basic differences between this and Xamarin? Is this Xamarin 2.0? Is this, is there something different?
I believe that what makes this so different is that it's all stored within the same. And Cecil, correct me if I'm wrong, because I have more experience in .NET MAUI than Xamarin. This is just a new venture I'm going out on. But what stands out to me is that everything is all within one single code base in comparison with Xamarin. Yeah,
I think if we want to be very, if we choose to be very specific, because I realize this comes out of Microsoft too, and sometimes words are confusing. MAUI is the evolution of Xamarin Forms, right? What does that mean? So we have Xamarin iOS, we have Xamarin Android, we have Xamarin Forms, right? Xamarin iOS is targeted to iOS devices, Android, so on and so forth. Xamarin Forms is like, I'm going to build one place and share code across these multiple things, right? So hence why Elahn showed us, we have that platforms folder. Here's all the places that we could go to create stuff, right? So Xamarin iOS and Android, I think, are going to be incorporated in .NET. I think the namespace is going to change. Instead of Xamarin dot whatever, it's going to be system dot blah, 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 whatever they decide to make it. And then MAUI, again, essentially, like instead of having Xamarin.forms.whatever, we're going to have like the MAUI namespaces. So my understanding is that most of your Xamarin code, most of your Xamarin Forms code should move over. Namespaces are going to need to get changed. I don't know if the CS project is the same, maybe not. There's going to need to be some tweaking. But if you're familiar with it, if you have those skill sets, those should move over. And what else is new? Sure, we have the ability now to I think, and let me know if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, but I think Xamarin Forms only did Mac desktop, Mac OS, you can do Apple Watch stuff, Android, iOS, but then now we have like the gambit of Win, now with MAUI, we have WinUI and WPF and all of the other Windows things. Underneath the same umbrella, but then also now being multi-targeted with the same code base. So hence why like MAUI is not like mobile application UI, right? It's multi-platform application UI, right? It's not just mobile, but it's mobile and it's tablets and it's watches and Windows desktop, Mac OS desktop, maybe Linux desktop, maybe next year, not this year.
The future, baby.
Sometime in the future. But now, again, you have a single thing that can multi-target.
Awesome. And listen, I want to hear more. Like I said, I'm muted. I have a couple of different questions, but I think we for my sanity and for my marriage, I'm gonna have to go a little bit.
No, that's fine.
I love this. I want to hear more. I'd love to have this presentation. I don't know how many other people. It looked like a lot of people had some interest in it. We'd love to have you two back, present us, show us, Elahn, what you've been experiencing this, that, the best person is the one that's, is struggling, is enjoying it, is, if you're enjoying it and continue on, that's what we want to hear. We want to hear all the possibilities. The future is, sort of this way of building it once and deploying everywhere. And so I think this is definitely the future. But I'm going to have to, it's like everybody else. Thank you.
Go.
That's what the missus is going here, and so I do apologize for everybody else. They have a million questions, and I'm going to have to ask them to come back next month. See if I can beg you to come back and show us more about this mobile thing. This is magic. Well, when Maui NFT comes around, that's also the future. I'll be there when that comes around. But mobile is taking over the world. It is what my daughter is on all the time. So I love it, and I want to hear more about it.
Yeah, maybe next time in the future we could. So we kind of just gave like a really big overview. Maybe in the future we could do more focused topics.
Please.
We just want to give everyone a general overview of .NET 6. Again, hopefully you like it. Hopefully you try it out. Elahn and I are both on Twitter and LinkedIn and other places across the interwebs. But like Damien said, we'll try and come back sometime in the future and we can all hang out and have a cool conversation.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody that's stuck around. And sorry if you definitely wanted to check out. I do want to hear more about everything that, especially how can we not have everybody here and ask all the million questions? You're going to have a million questions. I'll be honest. I can step away and the rest of you guys can have all the fun. But for me, this has to be it.